Today I'm going to show you how I arranged the orchestra parts for this song I'm working on, and it's not too complicated, there's not too much going on, so I thought it was a good sort of primer. Maybe I'll go into a more advanced one at some point. I don't think orchestration has to be super hard, but I know it's an intimidating topic, so I'll walk you through what I do, and hopefully you can learn from that and then put it to use in your own music. So this all came about because my friend Lee from the Metal Prognosis was working on a song. I offered to do bass and drums for him, and that's how this song came about. But I also wanted to do some extra orchestration because I thought the song needed a little something extra, and I enjoy doing this stuff. So it's relatively light because there's already a lot going on in this song, so it didn't need a heavy, huge symphonic mix. I just wanted to add some elements, and I thought this would be a good starting place if you're new to orchestration and maybe intimidated by it. So when I was done tracking the bass and the drums, got everything edited up, I thought it sounded pretty good, but I just thought a little bit of extra orchestration, some extra sounds will make this all the more epic, and I just think it could use that extra little push. It'd be fine on its own, but why not? I would always rather do more than less. All of my orchestra sounds here are coming from the Spitfires Originals series. I've got the epic brass, the intimate strings, and the epic choir, and I chose those because they're epic. These are comparatively cheap when their full libraries cost hundreds of dollars. These are only $30 each. They do what I need them to do in the context of a mix. So I've got 4 tracks here. I've got the choir track, the brass track, the short string articulation, and then the long flautando string articulation. Short and long strings, they need to be on separate tracks so that you have 2 plugins open. More CPU, but I think otherwise it wouldn't work because you'd be loading all these samples and that wouldn't be good. This song too is a bit challenging to write for because it is not really very tonal. There's not a whole lot of chord progressions and standard music stuff, standard harmony going on, just a lot of, open notes, hammer-ons, kind of notes all over the place, arpeggios that are not really signaling to a particular chord. It sounds heavy, it sounds brutal, but it's not really very tonal. So I have to write around that. I kind of have to create the chords, but also they have to fit with this chromatic stuff the guitar is playing. So let's listen to the guitar riff on its own. So I started off with this choir part. I just wanted to kind of pad out the section with some longer notes, some more ethereal stuff to give it a little more chill space because it's very kind of aggressive, jumpy riff all over the place, and I wanted something to ground it. So I want something to make it big, but also, in a way, kind of calm it down a bit, give it some grandiose vibes. So I'm not really doing major and minor stuff for the most part. This is just D, A, and D, and it sounded like it worked with the riff. Now, it may seem strange to put an A on top of an open G, but remember, that's just a ninth. So it's cool, and it's above it. And then it moves down a half step, same chord, just an octave with a fifth. Then I've got this fifth and then a little melody. And then I add in another octave of the fifth on the sopranos. Does create a lot of nice atmosphere on top of the guitars and gives it some more musical movement, I think. I come up with parts pretty much by ear. I mean, knowing the notes and maybe the chord you're playing does help to give you a starting point. And then if you know a few chords, maybe you can figure out, if you know your scales and your circle of fifths, like what key you're in. But I don't bother too much with like analyzing stuff when I'm actually writing music. I just play stuff on the keyboards, kind of get a feel for what I'm hearing in my head. I guess that's the real trick. You have to be able to hear it in your head and imagine what you want to be there and sing it, play it, figure it out on guitar, and then write the MIDI parts. A lot of it just comes with some practice and some experience, but try stuff out. Now, this is quite a simple part, but I think it sounds pretty epic just by being here and having some brass and some strings. What do we have here? We've got octaves, and those are just octaves of the guitar chords. And then I've got eighth notes of the same part, an octave above that on the short staccato strings. And then to make it have some movement, it goes to the long strings. Again, same part here. And then finally, I add a little bit of extra harmony here, aside from just the octaves, and give it a little more tonal flavor here at the end. Now, if you have this octave part and you want to add some extra chords, you can just drag these around until you find something you like and consider that major minor thing. Again, what key this is, doesn't really matter. So here we've got a D minor. Here we've got F with a fourth above that, so like a sus4. And then this would be C sharp minor because we're going down a half step. This one is F minor. There's also this kind of internal melody where you would probably expect this to stay up here on this A like it did the first time. That works fine, but by moving it down, we've got this little flow from this F sus4 to a F minor. And it just makes it that much sadder at the end. I also just added a little extra note here at the end to blend this into the next riff so that it doesn't just abruptly cut. Now, this last section is the most musically complex as the finale of the song. We have this little choir build up here. And I want it to be a little bit pained, a little tense. I mean, we're building up to a big break here, so I want some harmony in there that's going to increase the tension. The harmony of these is kind of important, but also not really. What I think is a lot more useful is look at this nice, interesting melody. We've got an ascending bass, so the lower harmony, the lower voice is constantly rising, and then we've got a melody that's not just constantly rising or falling, but doing both. And so that gives us contrary motion, as well as some parallel motion in these fifths. Now, parallel fifths, not cool according to Baroque music and most classical voice leading approaches, but this is metal, and we're all about parallel fifths. So it's okay here. You know, this isn't Bach. I love you, Bach, but not today. than this last part. So let's start with just these strings, because there's already some stuff going on there. We've got, again, a melody, and then it sort of splits off and goes down. And if I have one voice leading tip for you, it is contrary motion as much as possible. Having melodies, having different voices that don't just go in one direction with each other, or don't just stay on one note and have another melody on top, really voiced so that each line on its own is interesting, but also the shape they create together is also interesting. Let's look at this next string part here. This next string part has a pretty big range. Again, I want this to be epic. I want to build up some tension here at the end. Reminds me maybe a touch of some Stravinsky in there. That wasn't my goal exactly, but I do like him, so maybe there's some inspiration. I'd only like to think. I'm not the composer he is. When I'm working, I often start one part and get some of the outline of the melodies and stuff, and then copy it from one instrument to another and change stuff up. So they're different, but they're related. So you'll see there are a lot of similarities here. It's also easy to just know where the other instrument is before you start writing the next part, so that you're not just kind of shooting in the dark, and you can just tweak something that's already there rather than reinvent it completely. Choir part over top is a pretty simple line. And now that I remember it, I actually started with this choir part, I believe. It's the simplest, but I think that was basically just following the notes the guitar is playing so that I knew where everything was. And then I kind of added the rest of the orchestra underneath to make it bigger. So let's listen to that with just the guitars. So to recap my top tips for today, think about, first of all, imagine what the song needs, what the riff needs, and what would make it cooler. If you could do anything, just think about it in your head. What do I want it to sound like? And then think about, what do you need to do there? What do you need to get there? Is it synths? Is it choir? Is it brass, strings, piano? Imagine and then actualize. Start out with your keyboard, if you have one. If you don't, maybe get one, and play some different parts on top of what you've got on your guitars. see what works, try stuff out until you find something cool. You might stumble on something that's not what you would expect, maybe a little unusual, but it really sounds cool and you like it. And then try to figure out something simple that works, definitely works with the guitars, and then experiment with adding some extra harmonies and think about contrary motion when you're doing voice leading. Think about how you can make interconnected lines throughout your harmonies so that it's more interesting. If you are going for a little more classical, symphonic type sound, some good voice leading will go a long way. And if you're trying to go for that vibe and you have some really bad voice leading, it's kind of a giveaway that you're faking it. So the only way to do it is to learn it, like everything. But maybe study a little bit of Baroque voice leading. I don't necessarily follow the rules, and I don't usually sit here and analyze my harmonic choices when I'm making them, but I've been doing this long enough and I have enough of a background in that I know what things kind of should sound like and what things don't sound good or do sound good. But apparently I'm better at part writing than explaining it. If you like this, I did another video from this song about using IRs to shape your guitar tone when you already have a finished amp track. So go check that out. And as always, smash like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.